Hello, welcome back. Today we'll see Wittgenstein's private language argument. The private language argument is alternatively known as Wittgenstein's critique of private language. And this critique of private language has deeply influenced the philosophy of mind as well as philosophy of language. The consequence of this argument is not limited to the philosophy of languages which we study now, but also it's extended to the realm of philosophy of mind. It's about what is there in mind when we perceive something, what is there in mind when we claim something to be true or false. All these questions can be addressed using this private language argument or the critique of private language. First, we'll examine what is meant by private language. So, by definition, or the basic idea behind private language is that words have different meaning for different individuals. Think that you have specific meaning for a word. Okay, means you call this as pencil, or you understand this as pencil. Now, from childhood onwards, the perception that's in your mind when you see a pen is that of a pencil. So, whenever you see a pen, there is a perception of pencil in your mind, and since you are trained to call it pen, you call that image of pencil pen, or you name it pen. Means there may be differences between my perception of pen and your perception of pen. The image in our mind or the meaning we give for that perception may be different for different individuals. But we will not be able to detect that, because since childhood we have been experiencing the pen as pencil, or the black color as white color, the red as green. Now, my perception of red and your perception of green may be similar, but we will not be able to explain it, or we will not be able to identify it, because whenever I see red, my image is that of, say, R in my brain. So I call it red. And when you see red, the image in your brain is G. Suppose that it is G, similar to my green. But since you have been trained since your childhood to call G as red, you will always call it red. You will not be able to identify. So we are systematically misguided in ascribing meaning. So even if we hold a private language, even if we hold a language which we alone can understand, even if we have a meaning which we alone experience, we will not be able to bring it into public and say that my meaning of red is different from your meaning of red. So the meaning of word may be different for different individuals. What we perceive what the perception, the idea in our mind when we listen to certain word may be different. Now, according to this position, when one speaks out a word, the meaning conceived by the individual in his mind may be different from that of another individual's mind. Nevertheless, this difference is undetectable. And that's what I told. The meaning for the red for me and for you may be different. But we'll use red for always for the red objects, because the brain state, the neural state in my brain when I experience red is that of R. And the neuronal state when I experience green is that of G. Suppose, take it like that. But in your case, if the neuronal state when you experience red is G, and the neuronal state when you experience green is R, you will not be able to identify it. because whenever you see red, you will have a brain state or neuronal state G, and you will call it red because you have been trained to call it red. So the difference is undetectable. That is to say that people can be systematically wrong about their conception of meaning of words. We are systematically wrong. We are not arbitrarily wrong. We are not wrong in a random way. We have been trained to call the red as red, irrespective of the perception we have, whether it's R in brain state R or brain state G. We have been trained to call the red color as red color since our childhood. So this misleading or this misconception is a systematic one. So there is no way to detect this flaw. Wittgenstein criticized this position of private language, and he says that it's impossible to have private meaning for words. Foreign meaning is public, and language is a public activity. And this is an outcome of the later philosophy of Wittgenstein, that words do not have rigid meaning. And we have seen in Tractatus, the early philosophy of Wittgenstein, that words have rigid meaning. The designate. So for me, a particular word must have a meaning which is for me, which is specific for me. So there is a rigid meaning for a word. But as far as the later Wittgenstein is concerned, as far as the later philosophy is concerned, the meaning of a word comes out of its use in language or use in society or use in its public use. So for Wittgenstein, the meaning of a word is not private but public. We will get into the details later on. So it's impossible to have private meaning for words. He says that meaning of a word is not its internal reference. When I listen the red apple, there is an internal image in my brain or in my mind that what is the redness. Actually, we normally, following Locke, we normally consider this as meaning. The idea in our mind we consider as meaning. And we have seen that in Moore, we have seen that the meaning of a proposition is not the idea, but it has got a reference of its own. Here the reference in Wittgenstein, the reference is public or social. Or the meaning of a word is in its use, or it comes out from its use in its public use of language. It's not an idea in our mind. The reference is not that idea. Meaning is not the image or idea in mind of individuals. And Wittgenstein says that the meaning of a word or verbal sound has a function in public behavior. In the last section, we have seen in meaning as use, we have seen that the meaning of a word comes out of its use in language, and where it's used in a language game. So the meaning comes out from a specific language game. And the language game involves different individuals. So it's always public one. So the meaning of a word or sound as a function, it's a function. As Wittgenstein explains, that like the lever of a locomotive. Words have meaning like a lever of a locomotive. Locomotive is a engine. You take the case of JCB. JCB has got 4 or 5 identical levers, handles. They are similar, but the functions are different. One lever is used to bring the boom up, the other lever is used to fold the boom, the other is used to sing, like that. So even though the levers are identical in their outlook, their functions are different. So the meaning of that lever is not what it looked like, but its function in the JCB, whether it's to swing the boom, whether it's to fold the boom, or whether it's to raise the boom up and down. So there is no relation between the appearance and its meaning. The meaning is functional, the way it is used in that JCB. In the same way, a word does not have a specific meaning. The similar use of word or the use of same word in different contexts means brings different functions of that word. So, the same word when used in different contexts brings out different meaning for that word. When you say that, keep the letter in box. When you say that, keep my words in your mind. The meanings are different. It's not a physical keeping in mind. So it's some sort of secret keeping. The word keep used in keep it in box and keep it in mind. The meaning of the word keep is different. So in the same way, even though we use keep, the same letters, its function in different context, different language gives different meaning. So the meaning of a word is its function in public behavior. And language is a public activity as far as Wittgenstein is concerned. If the meaning that an individual has in his mind has no influence upon the public behavior, then it cannot be the part of a system. Now, another thing which we need to examine is whether our private meaning has got any function or not in public. Now, for Wittgenstein, language is a public activity. It's not private. It's used in social context through language game in a larger canvas of form of life. In a form of life, there is language game in which the words are used or we use language. And it's within that language game that meaning comes out. Now, if our private meaning does not have any role in public use of language, then it's meaningless. And that's what Wittgenstein says, that if the meaning that an individual has in his mind has no influence upon the public behavior, then it cannot be the part of a system. I'll explain it with a simple example. See this case color. This is black. Now, see this color. This is white. Now, suppose that the image or the brain state that is produced in my mind when I see a black color is X. When I see a black color, the brain state, my brain state is X. And when I see a white color, my brain state is Y. Suppose that you have got just the opposite brain states. When you see black, you will have a Y brain state. And when you see white, you will have an X brain state. Now, if I ask you, what is this color? For me, I have a brain state X, and I have been trained to call the brain state X as black. And for you, when you see this black, you will have a brain state Y. And you have been trained to call this brain state, your brain state Y as black. And you will call it black. I will also call it black. And when I see this, I will have brain state Y and I will call it white because I have been trained so. And when you see this, you will have brain state X, and since you have been trained to call the brain state X as white, you will call it white. So, irrespective of the meaning we have in mind, irrespective of our brain state, whether it's X or Y, we both will call it white and we both will call it black. So, irrespective of the brain state that we have, the use of language, the meaning of the word in public, does not make any difference. So, if our private meaning, our private sensation, or the difference in our private sensation, if it cannot make any difference in public use of language, then it's not the part of the system of language as public. And Wittgenstein says that a wheel that cannot be turned, though nothing else move with, is not a part of mechanism. A wheel that can be turned, though nothing else moves with it, is not a part of mechanism. If there is a complex mechanism in which there are so many wheels, and there is a wheel which when turned, nothing in the mechanism moves, or when the whole mechanism moves, there is no change for this, then that's not a part of mechanism. I'll explain it with a video. this is a mechanism which moves, and the gears are moving. The gears are moving, and if there is any single gear which is not moving, or which one moves, there is no change in that mechanism, then that wheel cannot be called as the part of mechanism. There must be some change in the mechanism when that wheel moves. And it's the same with the words which you have. Irrespective of the meaning you hold, if it doesn't make any influence in public, then such words cannot be, or such meanings cannot be called a public meaning. Now, if word can be used in public activity without going wrong anywhere, that's all Wittgenstein says is the meaning of a word. If I can use this as black and you can use this as black, or I refer to this color as black and you refer to this color as black, then the meaning of that word black is this, irrespective of what idea we have in our mind. And that's all the meaning. The meaning is the use. We use the word black to designate this color, irrespective of the fact whether we have same image in our mind or not. Hence, Wittgenstein says the words and concepts related to different individuals are impossible. Since the meaning is public, there cannot be different words for different individuals. Language is essentially a public social phenomenon. It's not private. Language is not private. Language is public, and it's impossible to have different meaning for different individuals. Accordingly, the language that only one can understand. What we mean by private language is that the language that only one can understand must be incapable of being translated and must be unlearnable by others. If there is a particular language which I alone can understand, the meaning of each word in that language is my own meaning, then that's a private language, and it cannot be translated into any other language. I cannot translate that meaning in Malayalam or English, because the moment I try to translate it in Malayalam and English, and I try to explain it to you, then it becomes a public one, and the meaning becomes a public one. We share the meaning. Once we share the meaning, it's no more a private language, and hence such a language cannot be learned also by any other people. So there is no sense in speaking about a private language. As sensation S, if private, cannot be measured and hence cannot be communicated to others. Like when I explain the sensation, this as Y for me and X for you. Like that, this is a private sensation which can never be measured and hence cannot be communicated to others. It cannot be communicated in language, because the moment they express it, it becomes a public one and you will catch your own understanding. But the meaning, as it's public, it's not going to make any difference. It can neither be defined ostensively because it's public. We cannot show that this is the specific meaning of black. I cannot show that when I see black, this image is in my mind. And it cannot be shown because it's a public one. Sorry, it's a private one. So there is no means of communicating the private language, if at all there is one. And since the meaning is public, we cannot bring the private meaning into public. So there is no possibility of a private language existing meaningfully. That's all for today. In the next class, we will take up specific criticism against the private language put forward by Wittgenstein, like memory skepticism, meaning skepticism, and beaten in the box argument. Till then, bye. Thank you.